When it comes to Canada's economy, there are short-term and long-term considerations. Certainly in the short term, a lot of people wondering about these higher interest rates. And while they've had some success in cooling inflation, there are certainly worries about stalling economic growth. We're also continuing to watch the fiscal picture in this country, and certainly that is a big question longer term, controlling the deficits, which in this case, this year is expected to top $40 billion. Let's talk a little bit more about connecting the economic and political dots. Jean Charest has served in both federal and provincial politics, including as Premier of Quebec. He's now partner at the law firm Therrien Couture Joli-Cœur, a role he recently stepped into, and he joins us from Montreal. Jean, it's great to have you back with us. Thanks for the time.
Well, thank you very much, John.
And, we spent a lot of time talking about the state of the economy. We had a conversation earlier with some guests who were concerned about the outlook. What's been your general sense of how Canada's economy is performing?
Well, it's always interesting to compare to our immediate neighbor, the relevant economy with whom we do compare, and that's the United States, who in the last quarter had 3.3% growth, 3.1% growth in the last year, and has had strong consumer consumption, which has continued, more investment in the manufacturing sector, and a very resilient economy, and their job market has held up. In Canada, the story's different. And the starting point for Canada, I think, John, that we always have to keep in mind is that household debt in Canada is very high. Among the highest of the G7, which means that the increase in interest rates hit our consumers and fellow citizens a lot harder than it does in the United States. The renewal of mortgages is going to be more difficult in Canada, and some of that is to come, into the future. So that's why I think it's, in part, the perspective is a little gloomier in Canada as we look at how people will renew their mortgages at a higher rate, how they'll handle that. They're already starting from a high point of debt, and that means that in the long term in Canada, it's going to be tough to get some growth out of this economy.
You know, it's interesting. Last week we were having a conversation. A former Bank of Canada advisor, David Wolf, who's with Fidelity, showed us a chart which essentially highlighted how much of Canada's attention has to go into housing because of the nature of our housing market today. And it actually plays into this story of productivity, which you've been asked about for many years. Everybody's always trying to solve the productivity equation for Canada and why we have been lagging on that front. So, I mean, how do we solve that issue if we want Canada to stay competitive and an economy that is growing?
And this is one of the real issues for Canada. Per capita growth, as opposed to general GDP growth, is where the real story is. Canada does not have a good story to tell. We lag other countries, we've fallen behind, and as we look ahead, we need to increase productivity. And in fact, the American story to the south over the last 2 years and their increase is about increased productivity. I think 2.5%. And so, and what does productivity mean? It means that we are going to be richer, that we're going to have more money in our pockets. Now in Canada, what that means is we have to address the issue of taxes, we have to address the issue of regulations. In the long term, of course, education, these are all the good things we have to attend to, and that Canada does relatively well if we compare with the rest of the world, including the United States, on the public education system. But we have underlying issues of a lack of investment in our industrial sector, in our business sector, and that includes technology, it includes automation, all those things where we have to do better. Now, one interesting point, if you look at the PwC report that was out yesterday, is that Canada seems to be more amiable, more closer to adopting AI than other jurisdictions are, because we are a country that does well on AI. So, John, that may be a light at the end of the tunnel for us in terms of increasing productivity. Hopefully, governments will cultivate that. The other part, of course, is getting our public finances in order. We don't have really a narrative on where we want to go with our public finances. And we need to have more discipline as we have slower growth in the economy and all sorts of geopolitical headstorms ahead of us, by the way, including the Gulf. So there's a lot to attend to, but the federal government needs to be, I think, in the next budget, pretty clear on what our anchors are for their budget and for this country's economy.
And what about on how we think about the economy and immigration? Because it is very clear that Canada is on a path towards a growing population. And as we have gone on that path and the world is watching, we've learned about some of the affordability challenges for new Canadians as well. And so if we want the story of being successful in Canada to be a very strong one, I mean, we did see the federal government cap student visas. But what are we going to have to be asking about our story longer term when it comes to an economy that can grow through immigration in a way that can also be affordable for all Canadians?
A flag has gone up, a big red flag on immigration politically in this country, and because Canadians have been generally favorable to immigration, contrary to the rest of the world, because they understand that we need people, and that's part of the growth of the country. But John, immigration has to rhyme with integration. That means those who come here must find an environment in which they can learn the language, they can get a job, and they can get a home. And there is where we have run into a big problem over the last few years, which could politically contaminate the whole debate on immigration. One of the things that mystifies me, John, is that there is no way we can integrate so many people without the federal and provincial governments working very closely together. And yet, that is not happening. And I'm intrigued by that. The federal government, if they do a summit, they should be calling the provinces together on figuring out how do we integrate, get people into the education system, get them into a job, teach them a language, find them a home. And there are things that need to be done at both levels of government, and yet I don't see that effort happening at the level it needs to happen if we're going to invite into Canada all these people who we happen to need, by the way, if we're going to build the country.
Before I let you go, we mentioned you're in a new role now, and as part of that, you're often talking with different business leaders and corporations. Give us a sense on the kind of work you're going to be doing and the conversations you're having.
I'm with a law firm that's atypical. We're very involved in the area of technology. We have a section, by the way, that does automation of requests for proposals. We just got a huge contract by the government of Quebec, and we're part of a $1.2 billion negotiation for an IT contract. So this is a law firm that is very different model from the others. My job is to help them grow beyond Quebec, grow beyond Canada, and grow their market share in a world where the clients who are looking for legal services are also looking for good business advice, and they need leadership, they need strategic advice on how to navigate the world, plus how to navigate a world, John, where government is going to play a much more important role than it has in the last 30 years. I mean, that's what we're looking ahead of us. This is a law firm like other law firms, but I think that one of the best law firms in Quebec to give business people advice on how to navigate the future shoals of investing in a world where government is going to weigh very heavily on all of our decisions.